Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again with another special edition look at Amtrak. Last time we figured out the best Amtrak trains to avoid air travel during a government shutdown. This time we'll see what trains worked out best during the World Cup. This year the World Cup is co-hosted by Canada, the United States, and Mexico, with games taking place at 16 different stadiums. 2 in Canada, 3 in Mexico, and 11 in the US. Unfortunately, there is currently no intercity passenger rail between the Mexican stadiums and no cross-border connection to the US, so those games don't count for this video. As for Canada, there are 3 trains between there and the United States. 2 are relevant to these games, and then you have Via Rail in Canada providing for a single possible connection between Toronto and Vancouver. The remainder of the venues are spread across the contiguous United States in various major cities. Chicago is conspicuously absent. Games there would have vastly changed the results of this video, since it's the rail hub of the Midwest. Before we talk about the best trains, let's set some ground rules. We're tracking intercity trains only. Commuter trains will count as local transit only. No more than 3 transfers from the city of origin to the destination stadium, which will include local transit. Each stadium is directly accessible by transit with 1 transfer, except for New York City, interestingly enough. In that case, you need 2 transfers by train or bus to get to MetLife Stadium, despite it being only 6 miles from New York Penn Station. It is also infamously illegal to walk to the stadium. Some of these singular transfers are existing services, some are special considerations, such as Arlington's shuttle bus to AT&T Stadium, since Arlington, Texas normally has no mass transit. 2 stadiums can be considered reasonably walkable from their intercity train station. BC Place in Vancouver, BC is about 1 kilometer from Pacific Central Station, and Lumen Field in Seattle is directly adjacent to King Street Station. At the time this video was being made, the quarterfinal matches had just solidified, so we'll be talking about travel to that point and omitting the final 4 games of the tournament. We're coming at this from the perspective of someone attempting to attend the games of their national team by rail. Though Amtrak is infamously slow, games have been spaced at least 4 days apart, making nearly every possible connection a real possibility for use between those games. Although in some cases you may wish you flew as you approach the game directly after exiting a 45-hour train trip. Some of these trips would be practical, some not. To connect these games, I looked at 16 different routes from the West Coast, Coast Starlight, to the East Coast, Silver Meteor, in every creative train name between. I broke these routes up into the segments that would be used by our hypothetical fans and figured out rankings for utility, average speed, and frequency. Utility was the amount of times a segment would have been used, and that factor was double weighted. The most used route segments are Amtrak Cascades from Seattle to Vancouver, BC, and Amtrak Coast Starlight from Los Angeles to Seattle. There are 2 possible connections to Vancouver games. Via Rail, which by no coincidence was the least used, takes 97 hours from Toronto. And Amtrak is faster from literally everywhere else on the World Cup map that is connected by rail. Coast Starlight would directly connect SoFi Stadium in Inglewood with Lumen Stadium, as well as facilitate quite a few of those Vancouver trips. Our fastest train segment is Acela on the Northeast Corridor between New York City and Philadelphia, averaging 70.52 miles per hour. There are faster NEC segments, but they don't have a World Cup stadium on both ends. The slowest train segment is the Texas Eagle between Dallas and San Antonio, Texas, which averages a mere 33.04 miles per hour. This would be used to reach Houston from Dallas, since there is no direct passenger rail connection between the two. Taking the train between these two cities results in a nonsensical 22-hour trip with an 8-hour layover in San Antonio to hop on the Sunset Limited when Dallas to Houston is less than a 4-hour drive. I didn't say these were all a good idea, just that they were possible. And lastly, frequency, not Amtrak's strong point. The majority of these trains are dailies, but hey, our riders are likely here on vacation with some time to burn. The most frequent connection is between New York City and Philadelphia with something like 3 trains an hour, and the least frequent would be 3 trains a week, like the Sunset Limited between Los Angeles, California and New Orleans, Louisiana. For this list, twice dailies like the Missouri River Runner between Kansas City and St. Louis were stellar, and no, I'm not joking. Without further ado, let's look at the top route segments. At number 10, we have Coast Starlight between Los Angeles and Seattle. Being heavily used for connections to Vancouver gives this train a big advantage. Unfortunately, it is only a daily, but since it's Amtrak, that puts it right in the middle of the pack. At 39.76 miles per hour, it is sluggish even by Amtrak standards. That results in a nearly 35-hour trip over its 1,377 miles. It's a good thing you have 4 days to get between these games. The nice thing about trains for this purpose is that they can carry a lot of passengers. Coast Starlight can move 300 or 400 football fans at once. Number 9 is the Maple Leaf between New York City and Toronto. Like Vancouver, it's not a surprise that this connection to Toronto would also be heavily used. It ranks number 3 in utility. It is, however, also a daily, but is a little faster than the Coast Starlight. This was just enough to nudge it higher in the rankings, but it's still pretty slow even by Amtrak standards at a 42.77 mile per hour average over 544 miles for a nearly 13-hour trip. Some of that is due to customs and a crew change at the border since operations is actually split between Amtrak in the US and Via Rail in Canada. Number 8, Texas Eagle between Dallas and Chicago. This would connect AT&T Stadium in Arlington with stadiums to the east. Because of that, it would potentially be well used, ending up at number 7 in utility. Thanks to the portion between St. Louis and Chicago, which has recently been upgraded to 110 miles per hour for $2.2 billion, this longer segment to Dallas ranks slightly faster than average at 46.3 miles per hour over 991 miles for a trip of slightly more than 21 hours. It is, however, still merely a daily, which keeps it from ranking even higher. Number 7, the Southwest Chief between Los Angeles and Kansas City. Like Vancouver and Toronto, Kansas City is somewhat isolated geographically, but unlike those, there are 3 different passenger rail route segments that connect to it. The Southwest Chief to Los Angeles provides a connection between Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City and SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, as well as other West Coast stadiums with a transfer to the Coast Starlight. BNSF's route through the Southwest is relatively fast for Amtrak at 50.15 miles per hour on average. That would still take 36 hours to cover the 1,828 miles between the two cities. People visiting for the World Cup from other countries may be surprised to experience just how large the United States is on trips like this one. Frequency, however, is still merely daily. Number 6, Amtrak Cascades between Seattle and Vancouver. This is a state-supported route. That's a service provided by Amtrak on behalf of a state or set of states. Also, like the Maple Leaf, Via Rail is involved north of the border. Cascade service extends all the way down to Eugene, Oregon, but in this case, we only need the portion to Seattle in order to connect BC Place in Vancouver to Lumen Field or Amtrak Coast Starlight to other venues around the US. This route tied Acela between NEC and Philadelphia for most utility. This is also a twice daily train, which is great for Amtrak. It is, however, the second slowest train surveyed, covering the 157 miles in 4 hours and 15 minutes for a paltry average of 37 miles per hour. Number 5, Southwest Chief again, this time between Kansas City and Chicago. This connects Arrowhead Stadium to all stadiums east, which puts the utility in the upper quarter of the pack. The Southwest Chief is only a daily, but this section is one of the fastest parts of the full 2,265-mile line between Chicago and Los Angeles. There are 437 miles between Chicago and Kansas City. The Southwest Chief covers those in just over 8 hours for an average of 53.4 miles per hour, which, believe it or not, makes it the 5th fastest train in this survey, and that's good enough for the number 5 spot overall. Number 4, Missouri River Runner between Kansas City and St. Louis. This would connect Arrowhead Stadium to contests at AT&T Stadium near Dallas and NRG Stadium in Houston. You might be surprised by this one, but River Runner is well balanced for what our ranking system requires: utility, speed, and frequency. This service is twice daily, which we have established is unfortunately better than usual for Amtrak. This train covers the 283 miles between Missouri's 2 largest cities in 5 hours and 40 minutes for an average of 50 miles per hour. Nothing fancy, just a solid all-around service by Amtrak standards. Number 3, Acela. Philadelphia to Providence, connecting Lincoln Financial Field and Gillette Stadium. In Philadelphia, you can get from Amtrak's 30th Street station to the stadium by subway. In Providence, there is an event train for games at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which is halfway between Providence and Boston. Since it would only serve those 2 stadiums, utility is middling. However, since it's Acela, speed is relatively good, covering the 275 miles in 4.5 hours for an average of 60.24 miles per hour. That makes it the second fastest train on this list. When combining Acela and Northeast Regional Service, which is slightly slower, this route also features roughly hourly frequency, making it the 3rd most frequent. Those 2 factors combined make the connection between these 2 stadiums much more valuable for travelers than Amtrak's more typical daily long-distance services. Number 2, Acela again, but between New York City and Providence this time. This would facilitate passengers between MetLife Stadium in Northeast New Jersey and Gillette Stadium, in addition to acting as a connector through New York Penn Station to contests in the West and Midwest. That gives this route the 4th highest utility on this list. Frequency is 1 train a day better than Providence to Philadelphia. It's also relatively quick, covering the 185 miles in a little over 3 hours for an average of 58.45 miles per hour. This all equates to what visitors from other parts of the industrialized world would consider run-of-the-mill intercity train service, but since it's Amtrak, it's the 2nd best on the list. And that brings us to the number 1 route. This will be no surprise to anyone familiar with the Northeast Corridor: Acela between New York City and Philadelphia, connecting MetLife Stadium to Lincoln Financial Field, and like Providence, many other contests in other parts of the map through New York. That gives it good overall utility for this 2026 World Cup. When combining all Amtrak trains between these 2 cities, you get an average frequency of about 3 trains an hour, which puts it at the top of that list by a wide margin. Speed is also tops. It takes Acela about 1 hour and 17 minutes to cover the 91 miles for an average of 70.52 miles per hour. This is world-class intercity passenger rail, albeit a pinch on the slow side. And no surprise, this is normally the busiest intercity passenger rail route in the United States. That puts it at the top of our list and likely makes it satisfactory for people visiting and rooting on their teams from rail-heavy places like Spain, France, and Germany. I was surprised by how possible most of these trips between World Cup contests actually are, but also dismayed that so many would end up being 2 or 3 day odysseys that most people would skip in favor of a flight. However, we've seen that decent intercity passenger rail service does exist in North America. We even have our New York to Philadelphia example that the rest of the world would recognize as pretty good. The World Cup doesn't come to North America every time, of course, but this event is just one example of how a more robust intercity passenger rail network can benefit our continent. Mexico is currently working on joining the club by building an extensive 100-mile-per-hour passenger rail network, which may eventually connect to the US network at Texas and Arizona. And imagine how much a completed California high-speed rail cutting 8 hours off a trip between Los Angeles and San Jose would change the choice to take a train instead of flying. The next time the World Cup swings around to North America, this list could look very different. Would Acela be able to retain its top spot? And what did you think about the trains on this list for this year's event? Let me know in the comments. Plenty more videos to come. I do not know what is precisely next. It'll be a surprise. Regardless, we'll definitely keep examining the possibilities of high-speed passenger rail in North America. If you'd like to support that mission, I have a plethora
What is a plethora?
of options for you. Check those out in the description or use the QR codes. Here's a list of people who have decided to conspicuously do just that. This content continues to be possible thanks to them. Let's give them all a hand. You too can add your name to this list on my Patreon page. But that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you on that big, beautiful freeway.